Oh, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dev S02 Dev, the podcast about everyday video game developers and what they do every day. Oh, I almost got that wrong. Kind of got it right. Anyway, time for another episode, this time with someone I have worked with before, Mr. Tom Miles. Great opportunity to dig into the fascinating backstory of someone that I had the pleasure of working with for a few years at my last studio. Really interesting insight both into how to be a very generalist engineer, how to find your way into video games even if a little later than you might like. Great story, great interview. I love Tom. He's a fan of the show as well, so it was great to have him on. I really appreciate his time. I think it's a really good listen. I really enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed making it. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. As always, Dev to Dev is available on Patreon, all of season 1 and the video version of season 2. Please join the Patreon if you can. It really helps me out. There's a $1 tier and a $5 tier. For the $1 tier, that's just supporting me. For the $5 tier, you get access to all the content. Also, please like and share the socials that I post. And thank you to everyone that engages and responds. Really good response to the last episode with Gonzo de Campo, which I thought was a great conversation. 2, I really enjoy making the show and I'm glad people are discovering it, and hopefully we can keep that discovery going. Please check me out on the DLC, Patreon, and also on the Retro Hour. Oh, we just put a new episode of Feeling This Out, a really interesting conversation with Christian about playing on the cloud and how that feels good. The Feeling This show we do is all about the mechanical feel of games, why games feel good to play, something that I'm very passionate about. So please check that out. And without further ado, let's sit back and listen in to another episode of Dev to Dev with Tom Miles. Yes, and I'm excited to dig into your history, Tom. We have worked together before, recently, for a good few years. But you know, as with all these conversations with folks that I've worked with but haven't had a chance to fully get to know, there's a load of your history that I'm excited to dig into. So thank you for taking the time. But as always, I like to start with my favourite first question: what first inspired you about video games?
And I knew you were going to lead with that, and that's the one I've been thinking about for the last kind of week or two since you asked me on. And I mean, it goes way back. You know, it goes way back to kind of I had a childhood growing up in the countryside of Norfolk, in the middle of nowhere, and I think I was kind of I'm at a privileged age where I grew up with home consoles and kind of electronic gaming and stuff. And so I was trying to remember kind of what my earliest memories were. And there's this kind of mix of kind of like the Binatone plug-in TV tennis and pong thing. I remember seeing a Donkey Kong arcade machine in a cafe in London, and my friends having kind of a ZX80 and those handheld games that they'd just have a Space Invaders on, or they'd have a Galaxia or something. That would just be like one game. And so, yeah, that was kind of like me in the middle of the countryside. Kind of, I love TV and films and just this world opening up of kind of gaming. And somebody said on one of your previous episodes, that ability to control the TV. You know, you plug in the Binatone and you're sat there and it's like, you've got the controller and you're like, I'm playing tennis. And it was terrible by today's standards, but it was just like, you know, as an 8-year-old or whatever, it just blew my mind. And then I think that the kind of the big deciding factor was when I was about 9 or 10, my brother brought home a Spectrum, a 16K Spectrum, because he was doing a computer science course at school. And I saw that, and it was like, I got the manual, and the manual had listings that you could type in, and you plug it in the TV, and I was writing games, you know, and you could see kind of these things just come together. And the power of that just kind of blew me away, I guess. It was just like, and from there on, it was like a staple of like, I can make things. So.
Right. Interesting. So the combination of being able to control something on the TV was mind-blowing, and then being able to make your own thing that you could control on the TV, I guess, took it to another level, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, kind of later on in life, I kind of, when it got to being a teenager and wanting to express myself and kind of being that kind of wanting to be artistic but not being able to draw, I tried a photography A-level to try and kind of do art without actually painting or anything. And I wasn't very good at that either. And so kind of being able to write games and create worlds was an artistic expression as well. So yeah, this whole thing of creation, I think, kind of really spoke to me and has continued speaking to me.
That's cool. Yeah. So interesting. So it was you had a creative bent in you, and it was the digital sort of video game expression of it, the engineering, the programming expression of it. And I guess I think we're very similar age, so I guess there was no designer or anything. It was like you either are an artist or an engineer. Yeah, that was kind of.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I also kind of grew up in the days of the Spectrum where you had like the kind of the programmers that would the bedroom programmers. They'd create the games themselves, and you'd read the like Crash magazine or whatever about these people, and they bought themselves Ferraris, and there was that kind of aspirational thing of like, wow, there's these teenagers that can create these things and get rich and kind of have these lifestyles. I never bought a Ferrari. I never got to that point. So I actually got into the industry a lot later than I would have liked. But uh, yeah, that kind of aspirational thing of one person that could do it all, um, and then kind of when we were younger and games were simpler and you could write it, and now obviously they're a lot more complicated and it takes teams of hundreds to make a AAA game or whatever. But you still get indie devs, but like the solo devs, so it's still possible.
It's come back again. Yeah, it's sort of come back around, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure they're driving Ferraris, but maybe they are.
The odd one. I think the odd one is. So interesting. So it sounds almost like you had an aspiration to be a video game developer quite early on. Then was that the sort of a career focus that you had, or was there other areas that you were interested in?
I don't know that. I don't think I kind of saw myself as a developer at the start, and like because I didn't understand how they were made, like how you go from like writing a game in base Spectrum Basic, which is slow and clunky, and to these kind of like the things like written by kind of Ultimate Play the Game, who were like became rare, who were my like heroes in my eyes when I was younger, creating incredible games. So I'd be kind of I'd follow the games industry, reading magazines, and I thought, you'd read about being a games tester, and thought, yeah, well, I can play games. Anyone can play games, or like you go, oh, I can write about games. Maybe I can be a journalist. And so, kind of when I was younger, it was more about just getting into the games industry to be involved somehow. And it wasn't till I was kind of in my 20s where I kind of actually learned to program C++ and go, right, I haven't made it as a games tester. I didn't even know how to get into it from that point of view. So I'm going to go for being a programmer, because programming was something I did all throughout my life when I was doing other things.
Right, that's fascinating. So you were a programmer already, and you tried to get in QA but weren't able to, so fell back to programming. That's so, to me, that's so backwards. Like, to me, like I was like, I'm not smart enough to be a programmer, so the only thing I can do is QA. So I will start in QA.
Yeah, I think it was just kind of the opportunity. I don't know if I was just waiting for a job to land in my lap or anything, but kind of I went to university. I didn't do very well at university, so I was doing other things, and it just maybe I didn't look hard enough. I know like there was a point where I tried a kind of a network engineering kind of IT role, and I didn't get the job. And I think I was very disillusioned in my early 20s about kind of even having a career in anything, because I'd go for job interviews and like they wouldn't go anywhere. So yeah, I focused on music at that point. I sang in a band in my early 20s, and that was me. My creative side and my artistic expression was all through that. And the games and the kind of the programming were just kind of something I did in my spare time.
That's amazing. Yeah, because it sounded like, programming was your creative outlet for a while, but then you enjoyed it, but almost like you lost faith in its ability to be a career, and so you went for music.
Yeah, well, I went to university to do a maths and computer science degree, because I did really well at maths at school. I really enjoyed it, and didn't really get much careers advice, and thought, well, you have to go to university to do a subject that you studied. so I've got to go and do maths. And then I found a course doing computer science as well. It's like, I can do this. Okay, I'll try. But the computer science side of it was very. I mean, this was what 1990, which kind of, you know, the internet was just starting up and kind of, but wasn't as, you know, in everyone's homes, and the computer science course was, I thought, was terrible. They were teaching us Pascal and making us write the programs on paper and then take them to a machine lab to program it. And then if there was a problem, we'd have to go back and look at it on paper again.
Like the 70s.
Like the 70s. It was, yeah, it was just like, and I was really disillusioned by that course. And then I tried finding some training courses, and I wanted to learn C++ or C because I'd heard that was good. And the only course I could get onto was doing COBOL, which is like a business language. And it was just like, nobody was using it. It was just all these old courses that were kind of, I don't know. It was just, yeah, it was a mess. And it was like, this isn't going to lead to a job in games, you know. I just didn't seem to be able to cut a break until I went to university for the second time. And by that point, like, I knew people in the games industry. Some of my friends had got into it. I knew that I could go to university to do a software engineering degree, learn to program in C++, and then that would lead to a job in the industry. And that's what I did. And at that point, it was like, I know what I want, and this is how I'm going to get there. So
got it. Right. So you had some friends that kind of led the way, sort of trailblazed, yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of, I was in my mid-20s by then, and I knew people that had jobs, and because I was into games, I knew people that were into games, and they had jobs in the games industry. So
okay, so it opened up for you.
So it opened up for me, yeah.
That's great. Yeah, so you went to the University of Birmingham was where you went to, yeah. And then how did you get from there to being in the industry?
It was at that point it was simple. I did my degree. I applied for a job first of all in Codemasters when I was in my final year. They gave me a conditional offer if I got a good enough degree, and I got that degree, and I started working kind of 2 months later. It really was straightforward at that point. Codemasters didn't work out, and so I was only there for 3 months. I looked around for a bit, had about 4 interviews, and then got the job at Creative Assembly, and that really was, you know, that's where it begins.
Yes, I was going to say, yeah. I mean, we'll get into the time you spent at Creative Assembly, which is no mean feat, you know, as an impressive tenure. But so I love the journey already, right? So you were in love with programming. You almost fell out of love with programming in terms of like being a career choice, being a life choice, for very good reason. By the sound of it, you were given a very horrible image of what programming was going to be, and then, you know, it sounds like your brother maybe inspired you to get into video games and, you know, and computers in the first place, and then your friends inspired you to kind of find a way back, you know, into the industry and really make it happen. And just like that, it happened.
Yeah, yeah. My brother was the enabler. I think it was his interest in computer science and the fact that he brought that Spectrum home, and that really kind of opened my eyes to kind of creating games. Yeah, and yeah, I guess the friends that I kind of met that were doing what I then wanted to do later on in life.
Did you meet those friends through video games? Were they fellow gamers? Is that how you knew them, or was it, you know, from uni, or how?
So one of them kind of, there's another guy called Tom, actually. I have a long history of friends called Tom, who I met when I was at school in Bristol. And kind of, he was in a band as well, and we kind of had a love of games and music. He ended up moving to Manchester, where I was living, lived with me for a while, and then took his music into the games industry and started doing music for Blade Interactive. Was it? Oh no, they weren't Blade at the time, were they? They did Rise of the Robots. I can't remember what the name of the company was.
Yes, I know who you mean. Yeah, I can't think of the name either.
Um, but yeah, he worked for them doing the music for them, and he was kind of that first person in the industry. And then I met somebody else from Birmingham who had he was a student on a physics degree, and he had a house full of software engineers who then went on to work in the games industry. And that's why I went to Birmingham. It was like I could speak to his friends to say, is this course good? Which courses do I do on it? Who do I avoid? Yeah, yeah. Who do I talk to afterwards? Um, and so, yeah, it was kind of friends I met along the way, I think. But I guess, yeah, I mean, Justin, my friend in Birmingham, I met through music as well. So I think that music thing kind of, and being actively involved in music and getting out and meeting people just meant that I met other people that were. But I guess the other aspect of it is that, like, when I got into the industry, I had loads more piercings and I had dreadlocks, and I was very much alternative culture. And the games industry, I knew, was a place where I could be accepted, as just kind of, for what I could do, not what I looked like. And having tried to get a job for 6 years in other industries, it was just like, yeah.
That's a great angle, yeah, that you sort of felt like video games not only was your passion, but it was also somewhere where no one would judge you, right? You could just show up and do the thing you love and be who you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I totally agree. I think video games, the industry is pretty cool for that. So you got a brief taste of it at Codemasters. That was that an engineering role?
Yeah, it was an engineering role. Like I the only time I've done anything else is on my degree. I had summer placements through the friends that I knew, and one of those placements was as in QA. So I was testing a game for like 3 months, putting in like all the long hours for crunch and stuff like that, and kind of I saw what the industry's like from the QA side, which is like, I hope in all the QA people that I've met along the way, I've been nice and understanding with them because I know how hard a job it is and how little thanks you get sometimes from engineers who are overstretched as well.
Yeah, and sometimes designers too, and yeah, everybody. Yeah, you're right. Um, Got it. Okay, so you got a little taste of QA, and then you got an engineering role at Cody's. How was that? How was it to kind of finally find your way in? I mean, obviously, programming was still a passion, remained a passion. You sort of, I guess you found your passion again. Yeah, you found the passion for programming.
Yeah, definitely found a passion for programming again, and it was really exciting. And I think I joined the studio just as the PlayStation 2 was being released or something, and they were one of the first to get a dev kit. And so playing around on a PS2 dev kit before the console was released, and it was like, this is the next gen. And it was like, ironically or unironically, I don't know, I think the first thing I did on a dev kit was to make Pong. Um,
Of course, love it.
so a little bit of a cycle there. So yeah, it was a really good experience of kind of like being on a team of engineers and designers and artists, and it was kind of, we were at an R&D point, so it wasn't so much building a game at that time, but just kind of being a part of it and going, yeah, I'm here. So.
Yeah, and what was your impression of the industry? Having finally found your way in, what was your initial impression?
It was kind of what I expected, I think. It was kind of welcoming, lots of crazy individuals and kind of lots of very creative and very talented people. Like, I think, the kind of the imposter syndrome was really ramped up. And like, I know other people on your podcast have talked about imposter syndrome. And it's something I felt all along the way, because you're with people that can write rendering engines and just kind of understand machines at a level that you can't possibly. Like when I was at school, I tried to learn assembly on the Spectrum, and I didn't understand it. I just like, and so I still have so much respect for people that can look at assembly and just kind of go, yeah, it's this, and this, and that's the problem there. And it's like, okay.
And and so had you sort of found a specialty in engineering yet, or were you still pretty generalist?
I have never found specialism in engineering,
That tracks, Tom. That tracks.
and that came back to bite me recently, which yeah, but I've never wanted to specialize, I think, and at the point where it got closest to me being a specialist, I jumped ship, um, because there's so much to learn. I mean, especially with the way games are now, it's just like there's so big and so many areas to it all that, yeah, pinning yourself to writing a rendering pipeline for 25 years or 5 rendering pipelines for 25 years or whatever it is, just felt wrong to me. And so when things got too dull, I found other ways to make it interesting. Um, but I think that's one of the thing about programming is kind of learning and discovery, and that's one of the things that kind of appealed to me about discovering computers and games and like this technology was just like, yeah, learning it all.
Yeah, it's funny, and maybe this is a stretch, right? But it's funny when I think about, what you can create as an engineer is sort of endless, sort of, right? Like you sort of got the keys to the kingdom in many ways, within many constraints, obviously, but you have a lot of flexibility, right? You also do in music, right? You have a lot of flexibility. You can create really anything in music. I mean, obviously, again, there's constraints based on the instruments you have and the band you have, right? But there's a lot of the sky is the limit in many ways. And it almost feels like maybe is that you, Tom? Is that something that you draw a lot of inspiration from, like having that power, having that ability to create?
Absolutely. And I'm sure you've heard in a meeting me say more than once that anything is possible.
Yes, that's a Tom Milesism if ever I heard one.
Might take a long time, but it's possible. There's always the caveat.
Yes.
But, when somebody asks me for something and say, is it possible? It's like, yeah, it's possible. And yeah, there is that power with programming of just creating things. You can create worlds um, and yeah, like, I mean, as a designer, you get to imagine worlds and you get to ask people to implement them. And
That's the thing. I can imagine anything, but my hands are tied behind my back. There's only so much I can actually do.
whereas I get to create, and the imagination part is a bit harder for me.
That's why we work so well together, Tom.
Yeah, like when I'm sure you get it as well. When people who don't know what it takes to create a game, and you say, "Oh, I make games," or I'm a software engineer, and they say, "Oh, do you think of all the ideas and make them?" And I like, no, I just implement other people's ideas.
Yeah, but that sounds like that goes right back to the very first inspiration, though, right? That, like you said, that power to not only have something on the screen, but control something on the screen, but also make it whatever you want to be controlled on the screen is sort of the genesis of this whole passion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and continues to fuel you.
Yeah, and then the flip side of that is when you're making it for somebody else. You're making it for an audience, and that's kind of goes back to music as well, and being in a band where you're writing songs and you're writing them to perform to other people. You can sit in your bedroom and do it, but what's the point of that? The real thing is to get out there and to present, and that's the same with games where you're making this thing. And I'm sure you've had this. I'm sure other people have spoken to a bit, but the first game you make, and possibly not so much anymore, but you go to a shop and your game is there on the shelf. And even better, somebody's picking up and reading it and taking it to the till. And you're like, yes!
I still have that today. Every retro shop I go to, I look for a copy of Primal, I look for a copy of 24, I look for a copy of Heavily Sword, and just see how much they're worth. I'm like, oh, £1.50 for Primal. Okay, fair enough. Like, £7 for Heavily Sword, bonus. Yeah, it never gets old, that.
No.
Yeah. So code is for a few months, and then you find yourself into Creative Assembly for what ends up being 18 years. Talk to me about that. Like, how did that happen? How did it? How did that come to be?
Um, so yeah, after leaving Codemasters, I think, as I said, I applied for about 4 jobs, and one of them was at Creative Assembly, who are down near Brighton. My brother lived in Brighton at the time, so it was like, yeah, I'll go for an interview. I'll go and stay with my brother and kind of go along. And it turns out they were the only people to offer me a job. I was like, okay, I guess I'll take that one. And what was really nice about it was that one of the people that I was in a band with worked there.
Oh wow.
I didn't know he was there at the time. I was just like, what are you doing here? And yeah, so it was. I went in as a junior with no real experience in the games industry, onto a team of probably about 10 engineers, and we were tasked with writing Rome 1 from scratch. They'd previously released Shogun and Medieval on the first engine, and they wanted to write a new engine. Like, oh my god, who does that these days?
Madness.
And that was kind of. I had no specialism at all, and it was just like, we need you to do this, we need you to do that. Sure, okay. And so I was writing weather systems, I was doing a bit of graphics work, I was doing a bit of campaign map work, a little bit of AI. And then I kind of got onto UI, and nobody else wanted to do UI. So it was like, yeah, I'm a junior, I don't know what, why does nobody want to do this? I'll do it, it's fine. And I was the only person doing the UI for the entire game, which is something I'm still very, very proud of. And yeah, that kind of led to probably 8, 9 years, 10 years doing user interface for Total War games.
Right, and that's a heck of an interface as well.
And that's a heck of an interface, and yeah, I mean, it's such a big part of my life, but it's hard to know what to say about it other than, yep, I wrote the UI. But it was a really good time to be in the games industry as well. I feel like the teams were small enough that you could get to know everyone. There was a lot of camaraderie. We'd go out socializing all the time because we all worked in the offices. And there was kind of crunch, but it was fun crunch, where like every lunchtime we'd play Bomberman on the Saturn. I got 8 controllers all plugged in, and we'd all play Bomberman. And then in the evening, like when we were waiting for builds, we'd like gather in the meeting rooms to play other games, and it was just like, and everyone was single, and or no family, so you didn't have family commitments getting in the way. And yeah, it felt like just a fun time where we were all doing what we loved doing and kind of wanted to see good results. Yeah.
I mean, you say you kind of stumbled into UI, but you stuck with it for a long time. Like, I mean, you must have found the passion in it, even if you initially were like, I'll do it because no one else does.
Yeah, I mean, it was making stuff. It was making games. It was kind of putting in a big contribution to the quality of the game, and so it was something that I could feel passionate about, and it's something that kind of, when you stay at a company and companies get bigger and products get bigger, it's much harder to kind of break out to do the other things. But I also, I mean, there was a point after Rome where I did a bit more campaign map work to try and stop doing UI. But then, I think when we started Empire, which again was another new engine, and I wrote the UI system again, and then kind of handed it over to a couple of other people, but it was hard for me to let go of my baby. And when they needed a bit more help on it, it was like, okay, I'll get pulled back in and I'll come and help out. And this is where you're going wrong, and this is what we need to do. And it, yeah. In those early days, it felt there was a lot to do, and not enough people to do it. So I kind of carried on helping out. And that led to me building up a team of kind of like, I think there were 6 or 7 UI engineers by the time I left the UI team. And so that became kind of, running a team as well and doing more of the management side and, rather than just kind of, I guess kind of moving more into like running a team took me away from wanting to do more of different engineering because it was different challenges, and so it allowed me to carry on doing UI but still have that learning and that development. And
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. You're kind of broadening your skills in a different way. You're continuing to, it sounds like you've got a thirst to kind of keep learning and keep growing, which that generalist role is great for. But then, yeah, as you get pigeonholed, it's like, oh, how do I find other areas where I can, yeah, it's a good way of looking at management, actually, from that perspective.
yeah, and moving more into management means that you're not going in quite as in depth into things, which takes that focus away from specialism as well, because you're saying, I trust you to do this. you want to move it in that direction. Okay, let's do that. And yeah.
But you had a good grounding in the technology and in the UI, and it's interesting, Tom. Right, I love the way you framed that. Music kind of gave you a focus on the on the end user. Right, it gave you, because I've definitely worked with engineers that are not like that. Right, they're engineers that are very much like, I'm just building this thing because I'm enthralled in the building of it, and I don't really care who uses it. Right, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I just think that's a way of programming, and it sounds like you said, the music aspect gave you a different perspective. And again, maybe this is a stretch, but UI is very player facing, right? That's very customer facing. So it almost feels like that was the perfect place for you to be.
Possibly. I'm sure there was a reason why I said, yeah, I'll do UI, more than just nobody else is doing it and it's and I wanted something to do. It was the whole kind of user experience, like, I mean, that's a loaded term for other things, but yeah, the way a player interacts with your game and the impact that you can have at that level, I think, it speaks to me a bit as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the point, right? Yeah, you're absolutely right that it's a role that allows you to impact the player directly. That that a renderer engineer kind of does, but doesn't in such a direct way. And that is an aspect of engineering that's really interesting, right? Being more of a gameplay engineer that's focused on the player and the gameplay than necessarily the technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you do a long stint in UI, and then when you also moved into some porting and some online stuff at Creative as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So that really kind of, it got to the point where I spoke before about kind of how you get narrowed down, and like when I started at Creative Assembly, I was doing all of the UI, and then for the next project, I did the campaign UI, and then for the next project, I did the front end UI, and then for the next project, I did the battle lobby for the front end. It was just like, it just, from having this wide scope into this real narrow focus of like day on day doing one screen. It was just like, or 3 screens or whatever, it was just like, I need to get out of here. And it also, we got to a point where we weren't writing new engines because that was really expensive. So we were just using the same engine. Everyone was happy with the tools pipeline that we'd created for UI. Everyone was happy with the way you could build UI, make it function. And it felt like the tech was stagnating, and I had no idea of how to move it forward. So, because I've been in it for so long. So it was kind of, at that point, I was looking for other things to do. But I've had this thing of, if I'm okay at a company, I don't see any reason to leave it. And so I wanted to carry on my career at Creative Assembly. Like that, it was a good company. I liked the people. I'd been there a long time, and the retention at Creative Assembly was insane. Like there was people there for years and years. There were people there longer than me. They were just so it was a good place to work. So it was just like, what other opportunities are at the company? We'd grown to like 300 or so. There must be other things, and the opportunity to port to Linux and OS X came up, and it needed somebody who'd been involved with the engine from the start, which I had. And yeah, it was a couple of us. So we were just kind of thrown into it. Here's a Mac, here's a Linux installation. Go at it. And it was a really good learning opportunity again to kind of find out about other operating systems, other tool chains, and the differences between making code portable, which we hadn't really considered for that long. So the upshot was that it was actually hours of watching a compiler and to try and find an error. So it wasn't hugely exciting, but I did get to go and visit Valve in America as part of the Linux port, which was a fun trip. So
It's cool.
Had its lectures, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you get to kind of break out, and I guess had you moved out of leadership at that point, right? Yeah.
It was a real kind of hand the reins over to kind of one of the rising stars of the UI team and say, look, I trust you and to carry this forward, and you've got way more ideas about the tech than I have. So I guess that was kind of the closest I've come to being a specialist, was just like me and a couple of other people. This is our primary focus of porting the game. But I think it took a kind of a generalist mindset to kind of touch on all the areas and refactor and rebuild without breaking everything.
Yeah, and that sounds like that would have been based on what I understand of your character, that would have been a nice shift, right? To finally shift away, like you said, shift away from the focus on UI and into something that is back to that more generalist route, almost back to how you started at Creative Assembly, which is like, here's a big, wide problem.
Yeah.
Go solve it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, yeah. And then you move a little bit into online.
Yeah, well, that was the kind of the porting team. Kind of, we released the project, and then OS X ports were handed over to a third party who paid us to port it. So it kind of, that role disappeared, and there was a position open on the Total War Arena team who were doing a MOBA with lots of back-end services, and the team lead there was like, yep, come on board, learn Erlang, write some back-end for me. And I'm like, sure, great.
Yeah, another thrown in at the deep end, learn on the job kind of thing.
Yeah. And but that's what I've enjoyed, just, here's a problem, solve it, use these tools.
I can see why you enjoyed and also were frustrated, but enjoyed working on the project we worked on then, because there was a lot of solve this problem, Tom. We've got nothing. Figure it out.
Yeah, it was. So I did back-end services and that was an area that I wanted to move into because it was like really interesting. There's so much stuff like you can learn about Amazon Web Services or Microsoft, whatever, like Azure stuff and containerization and kind of multiplayer stuff and the real guts of networking. But I didn't manage to carry on in that path, unfortunately. But it's something I would have liked to have done.
Yeah, so that sort of takes us to 18 years at Creative Assembly. What moves you on?
I think the Arena project wasn't working out, and the team, I don't know, like this is going to sound bad, but so when I got into games or development, we talked earlier about kind of how like the engineers were kind of led projects, and like they were the superstar engineers. And I'm not saying I wanted to be a superstar engineer, but as the industry changed, the designers got more of the focus, and they became superstar designers, which is fine. I was old enough to kind of go to not want the lights on me too much, but some designers are a bit too superstar-y. And I clashed with someone really badly on the project. One of the and it got to a point where I thought, I've been here 18 years. I've done everything that I think this company can offer me. Like, I didn't want to go back to Total War. I don't think there would have been a role for me anyway, unless I'd taken changed my role significantly and become a junior again or something, just. And there had been times where I had felt trapped in my job when you've been somewhere for so long, and by this point I'm married with kids and kind of can't afford to take a financial risk, can't move away because the kids are at school. My partner had a job, and it was just like, I'm stuck here. But it got to a point where at Creative Assembly where like I wasn't enjoying it. I was going into work and hating it, and I was like, I'm going to look for something else. I think, you get one of those random recruiter emails and they get you on the right day, and I go, actually, I'm going to phone them. And that led to a few interviews, and then finally with an interview at the multiplayer group, where it was a phone interview where people just talk it was just talk about my experience, who I am, no test, nothing. They took me for kind of going, I think the line was, you've been at Creative Assembly 18 years, you must be doing something right. And they gave me a job. And it was fully remote, so none of those worries about kind of moving away from kids or moving the kids or whatever. And and it was a small company again, and it was back to that kind of like a small team just kind of doing stuff to help make games, and it's co-dev. So I thought, oh great, it's going to be loads of small projects. I'm going to help out. I'm going to have this generalist mindset again, where I get to work on lots of different projects, solve lots of problems, learn lots of things. But they took me on to the ZeniMax project, and I was on there for 6 years. I'd imagine from scratch. And it was like, I've been here before.
Yes, horribly familiar, I'm sure.
Horribly familiar, but a real fun project. And working with some great guys again, or great people. And the remote thing worked out.
And that was before COVID, yeah? That was
that was before COVID. So when I joined Multiplayer Group, I was the only person on the ZeniMax team who was remote. So I'd be dialing into meetings where they'd all be in a meeting room, and I'd be on webcam going, I can't hear you. Can you get close to the camera? And I'd be going up to Nottingham kind of a couple of times a year to kind of meet people and spend a week in the office and it was good. It was a bit of a culture shock going from a 300-person company backed by Sega with all the money to a little office in Nottingham. Going, okay, the kitchen is like this. Got a little one tap and a kettle again.
Yeah, I mean those things are especially when you've been somewhere for so long, right? It's hard to make that shift somewhere else and settle straight back in.
Yeah, but they were very welcoming, and Multiplayer Group grew to about 200 people and got backing by big companies and became the kind of company that I moved away from. And it was a bit like, I wanted to move away from this, and here we are again. But at least I've got a pension and healthcare.
Yeah. So yes, and so you end up you are at the Multiplayer Group working on one big project, with but from my time working with you, Tom, sort of going back to those comments about gameplay engineering, right? You've always struck me as someone that is very passionate about games, right? Who is an engineer.
Yeah.
You've continued to be a gamer, right? Is there anything, any other games? Is there any sort of other aspects of games that you enjoy that sort of keep you fueled in that way?
I've definitely. Um, I was thinking about this as well, and I don't play many games now, but it's a bit like an alcoholic, isn't it? Being a gamer, you can't. You're always a gamer at heart. And I still have multiple consoles, and I still I play Overwatch with my kids, which is great. I played through all of Expedition 33. It's just like it's a lot harder for a game to pin me down than it used to be for some reason. Um, but in terms of other aspects of gaming, I play I play the Pokemon trading card game,
You do. I love that.
and I played that for 9 years, and I go to tournaments,
Yes.
and that's kind of that's gaming, but it's gaming where you can get outside and you can travel and you can meet people, and um, yeah, and I play board games with kids and stuff like that as well. So there are. I think I've just broadened the whatever it's called of gaming.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember the first time you took PT, you took some time off at work, and somebody was like, "Oh yeah, he's in France playing playing a Pokemon tournament." I was like, "Why he plays Pokemon like competitively? Like why? Like what pulls you into that?"
Um, it started as something to do with the kids, and it was just like I was in a board game. There was one near the office, board game shop. There was one near the office, and there was this Pokemon like pre-built decks, and I was like, oh, my daughter was like, she'll hate me for saying this, but she was really into the anime, and my son was playing Pokemon Go, and I was like, oh, there's this Pokemon game, and it's like a board game. We can play it together, and we played a few games, and my kids were like, okay. And my son played it for a little while and like came to a few tournaments with me. But my daughter was like, the first time she lost, it was like, no, don't like this. But there was something about it to me. It was just like, just learning the rules of a game, and being able to go and just sit down in front of someone, have a conversation while you're playing. But there's that kind of competitive edge. Well, I mean, it's a competitive card game. And it really kind of, I'd never seen myself as a competitive person, but it really brought that out of me. It's like there was this thing inside me, like, I want to win. I want to get good at this and I want to win. Like, and I'm not good at it. I can win sometimes, but I don't do very well at these tournaments I go to. I kind of place in the middle of the field. Sometimes do a bit better, sometimes a lot worse. But yeah, it was just like this kind of competitive side. Um, I don't know because I've never been a competitive gamer. Like we used to play Counter Strike at lunchtimes at Creative Assembly, and I was terrible. I'd enjoy it, but for the kind of the fact that we were all playing together. Yeah, so I don't know.
Yes, that's fascinating. That some combination of because Pokemon's quite a there's a lot of skill and a lot of skill expression in Pokemon, isn't there? Like how you assemble your decks, how you in those kind of TCGs, right? There is a lot of agency, I guess, and that feels like that sort of tracks with your desire for freedom and flexibility, maybe.
Definitely, yeah, I think so. But I think it became more about the social aspect after a while, because like when I was kind of in my 20s, I was playing MMOs, and that really was about kind of like the ability to connect to like hundreds of people and to have these common goals and to meet people, and like I'd go to guild meetups and stuff like that. And and Pokemon was a bit like that. It was a chance to kind of get together, play with like a load of different people, talk about something, a shared interest. And when you go traveling to these tournaments, you go with a group of you, and when you go to lots of tournaments, you meet up with other people who also travel. And people in the past have talked about finding your tribe, and like gaming was a tribe for me at one point. And music was a tribe before that. It was like, when you're late teens, early 20s, you're very passionate about the music that you like, and you associate with everyone that likes that same music, and there is this kind of tribal thing. And then gaming's like that as well, where you get the people who play the one MMO, and everyone else that plays a different MMO is terrible. And and yeah, and then like the trading card thing, um, kind of appealed to that as well, of just kind of that common interest and meeting people.
And I wanted to ask you, like, you mentioned kind of growing up in a very rural place, right? You had a brother that kind of pulled you into video games, but now you're sort of drawn to this social aspect, right? Was there a parallel there? Like, did you grow up kind of in a solitary childhood, and you're sort of drawn to that multiplayer stuff later on, or is that just coincidence?
I don't think it's any coincidence. Yeah, I lived in a little village. Went to a small school. Kind of had like one or two friends. And I'm going to throw I was a middle child, Gen X. Forgotten generation. Always ignored by my parents. Poor me. So yeah, kind of. In the early days of gaming, it was a way to connect with people, and like you'd find that friend at school who also had a Spectrum, and you could hate the people that had Commodores, and you could have these little kind of
Correct.
and that kind of carried on. I mean, we moved to Bristol when I was 13 or so kind of less kind of isolated then, but still kind of like my friend group would be the people that also liked playing games, and we'd go to the arcades together, and yeah, I guess it's been a way to meet new people, make friends. Yeah, so it's definitely, I think that there's something about kind of growing up in the countryside on your own, and not being able to go out and meet people. So you kind of have your computer, and and that would be what you had. I don't know.
You hear that about musicians sometimes as well, like, music, playing live music is a way of connecting with people, right? And if maybe you've got a longing for that, just feels like there's some parallels there.
I definitely have a longing to connect. I've spoken at great length about that kind of thing.
So now you find yourself at Antstream, which is an awesome service, right? Making retro games run on the cloud. Like, how has that sort of been, that transition, right? Because you were MPG for about 6 years, working on a big project, and now you've gone sort of again to work for a small team working on a.
Yeah, it was a kind of a weird transition, but like what I said about being a generalist, not a specialist, is kind of biting me. Is like every job I applied for recently has wanted a specialist, and in Unreal Engine kind of specifically, and I've spent my career in proprietary engines, so I was finding it really, really hard to find something in AAA game dev. And then this opportunity came up at Antstream, and it was like it wasn't writing games, but it was building pipelines, creating infrastructure, writing applications and tools, and it was like, oh yeah, that's the kind of thing that I did alongside AAA game dev when you could, and it was like, this is going to be interesting, and it's a streaming platform, so there's an opportunity to learn about the back end stuff that I was learning before, and it's actually with the team lead who was I worked with at Creative Assembly on the back end stuff. So I met up with him. This is horrible because it's like, yeah, you only got this job through nepotism, but it's what it takes. But he was like, you're perfect for the role. We're after a generalist. We're after someone who can be given a problem and find out ways to solve it. And it's remote again, or still remote. And I was a bit worried because like I was going to be on my own basically doing this, but actually having that agency of just going and trust of kind of going, here's what we want you to deliver. This is when we want it by. Go for it. Has been really nice. It's just like, I said kind of before I'd had problems with designers who were kind of like too controlling and kind of telling me what to do, kind of micromanage me, to go from that and to just kind of like, yep, we trust you to do a good job, has been great. And not writing games hasn't been as much of an issue as I thought it might be, because I'm still surrounded by people who love games and who love games from the era when I started loving games. So we have conversations about kind of Dreamcasts and about like Neo Geo consoles and just kind of like all those things
And
that
Saturn Bomberman.
Saturn Bomberman. Yeah. When we were playing Saturn Bomberman at Creative Assembly, we used to joke about getting a dev kit to fix some of the bugs. And I think now I'm actually working with people who probably could do that.
I was going to say that, yeah. If you could get Bomberman on Andstream, you could maybe do that. Yeah.
So yeah, I've been there 2 months and it's been great. It's really exciting. I'm excited for what they've got planned next as well.
I'm excited for you, Tom. I'm a big fan of the platform, so like I'm excited that you found a home there, and it sounds like it suits you. From this conversation, it suits you down to the ground. You know, in terms of learning new stuff, generalist. You know, stuff you've done before, but new stuff. It's great.
Yeah, it's not being tied down to a specific thing. It's learning new stuff. It's meeting new people.
So I'm curious, sort of conscious of time. I think the answer to this is probably obvious, but if you weren't making video games, what would you do?
If I weren't making video games, and I could actually do it successfully, I'd be a rock star.
I figured music would be the obvious choice. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I go to see bands still, and I see like there's like all the bands are younger than me now, and I stand and I watch them and I go, oh, that was me once. Why am I not still doing this?
So you still have a passion for for making live music? Do you still have time for it?
I don't have time for it. I never made the music. I was a singer, so it was more about kind of like having an opportunity to write down stuff and sing. I love singing, and yeah.
I want to hear you sing now, Tom. I've never heard you sing.
Strangely enough, I don't do well. Kind of when people say, "Oh, can you just sing for me?"
Right. Yes. I know what you mean.
With enough pints at a karaoke.
Yeah, the voice comes out.
Yeah.
And obviously your brother, your older brother was kind of an inspiration. Sounds like you got a younger brother too. Are they still into games? Do they still relate?
Younger sister and a much younger half brother. So no, I mean my older brother is a carpenter. I think he likes technology. I was quite surprised when he was to find that he was obsessed with phones when mobile phones were like getting more powerful, because it's like, you don't like technology. And he was like, yeah, I do. So yeah, that was a bit of weird. So he did used to play games, but yeah, I think he's just happy. He's a guitarist actually. I think he's just happy to do his carpentry by day and play his guitar at night and go cycling and kind of take things a bit gentler. My sister's very into horses, not really into games, and just coming to grips with her kids kind of wanting to get into games because her husband plays. So, yeah, family not so much.
Right. Right. So you're the main engineer in the family then.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it sounds like you got kids. Your kids are into the games as well. The kids are playing. Have they have any aspirations to being in games, or do they just enjoy them as consumers?
My daughter has always said she wanted to get into character design or environment art. I think a lot of that comes from kind of anime. Again, she would hate me for highlighting that because she's not into anime like some people are. But I think she's into it from the artwork side of it. I think I haven't really spoken to her at depth about it, but I think she saw me kind of in the games industry and you can do that. And she saw having a career there. But she's going to university to do illustration next year or this year. so I think that's a kind of a, I don't know about character design. I want to try something else and see where that takes me. So, and my son is like he likes gaming. He's like I think he's got a Clash Royale account that he's had for like since he was 10 or something like that. He's 20 now. I don't know. And again, we play Overwatch together, and he plays Minecraft still a bit. But it's I think it's he's at university doing osteopathy, so it's kind of a side to that. Like he left all the consoles here, doesn't game while he's at uni, and then comes back for the holidays and plays with us and plays on his phone a little bit. So he can compartmentalize it. So I don't think either of them are kind of quite as into it as I ever was. But maybe that's kind of growing up with it. They didn't need to be or something. It's just granted.
Yeah, yeah, and it doesn't. Yeah, it's an interesting question that like the kids that grow up now. When we grew up, being a developer was like a fantasy. It was like who even does that, right? Like how do we even get to do it? Like you say, we grew up in the era of the bedroom coder, but it was still this mythic role, and now it is much more attainable. I think that it was, as many other roles are. So maybe it takes a little bit more like true passion to like go, no, that's what I want to do, because there's more opportunity than maybe there was when we were kids.
Yeah, and they're not going to be at the point where they're begging their parents for an Xbox for Christmas because I've already got an Xbox, a PlayStation, a Nintendo. Yeah.
That's another good point as well. Yeah, that video games, they don't kind of have that mystique, that allure, that kind of like this treasured good that maybe you'll get to play for a little bit, or you'll get to play on a friend's machine maybe once a week or something. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there was the FIFA tax every year for a while, but fortunately that died.
Yes, yeah, I had that for a while too, but that was me. Um, cool. Yeah, I mean, I love your story, Tom, because I feel like we can connect those creative dots, right? Like you had this creative inspiration since you were a kid. You found an outlet through engineering, even if maybe you had some periods where maybe it wasn't quite what you wanted to do. You found your way to it, and it's fulfilled you ever since. And even when it's been tough, you've sort of found your way through it. And I know from working with you, you're one of those engineers that designers love to work with, because you care about games, you care about the way games are played, you care about the gameplay. And those are this is always fun for a designer.
Yeah, and I want to kind of help designers create that vision.
Absolutely, great point.
So yeah, at the start it became kind of it was what can I do to make games, and towards the end it was how can I help people make games.
That's such a wonderful, yeah, I love that.
So and the passion was kind of at the start was let's make games, and that's still there, but the passion is kind of helping. and I think that's from being a parent. It's just like it kind of brings out that kind of like other people want this more than I do, and how can I help them get that?
Yeah, that's a great point. And especially when you like back to a period in your time where you had some aspiration of being the design, the engineer that made the thing and got the Ferrari, right? Even if in passing, right? I love that evolution of like growing up, having kids, and how that shifted the way you approach your role. Love that.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, thank you, Tom. I appreciate the time. Great to get to know you even more than I felt like I did before. And great story. And yeah, thank you for taking the time.
Well, thank you very much again for having me on. I love talking about myself.
I enjoyed the discussion. Thanks, Tom. It was great.
Yeah. Okay.